If there's one person a professional mixed martial artist doesn't want to upset, it's UFC President Dana White. If you're an aspiring fighter or veteran looking to make a mark in the world's biggest promotion, then the UFC President is the man you want on your side. Still, despite his vast influence, there has been no shortage of UFC standouts who have gotten on Dana White's bad side over the years. So for this video, we'll be taking a look at 10 examples of high-figure profiles who decided to cross the boss. As always, if you guys enjoy this video, then please be sure to let me know by leaving a like and subscribing to our channel. Now without further ado, and ranked in no particular order, let's take a look at 10 fighters who got on Dana White's bad side. Number 10. Tito Ortiz. Before he became a member of the UFC brass, Dana White managed some well-known fighters, with one of the athletes that he worked with being former light heavyweight champion Tito Ortiz. Unfortunately, once Dana White became president of the UFC, his relationship with Ortiz went south rather quickly.
I don't want to be 45 years old competing in the UFC, you know? I don't want to be doing a 20-year span of murder myself trying to make $1 million.
And a lot of these other guys do. That's not the way they look at it.
Yeah, they look at it just slaves for you, man. That's what it comes down to. That's all they care. That's what
all these guys feel like, slaves.
No.
These guys are competitors who come in here and want to prove that they're the best. Some of them fight 3-4 times a year.
Because you're going to make them a superstar.
Because this is what they want to be.
That's your quote words.
No,
I'm going to make you a superstar.
No, you're the one that wants to be a superstar. These guys want to be fighters. That's the difference.
Okay.
In fact, things became so heated between the two that Ortiz requested a 3-round boxing match with his boss. Surprisingly, Dana White actually accepted the challenge.
He put in his contract that he wanted to fight me to get rid of all the bad blood that we have between us, and I accepted.
Prior to the match, Dana White trained for several months and even got the Nevada State Athletic Commission to oversee the scrap. However, Ortiz failed to show up for the weigh-ins, later saying that he was upset over the lack of compensation for the proposed contest. Of course, Dana White had a different take on Ortiz's decision to no-show. According to White, Ortiz knew that if the showdown actually took place, he would have lost.
Tito and I have boxed before. It wouldn't have been the first time Tito and I boxed.
Oh.
And
how's it usually go?
Not good for Tito.
Could you have won? Yeah, I would have won. I absolutely would have won that boxing match.
Still, despite the intense dislike between them, their feud was never settled inside the ring. Following a prolonged losing streak in the UFC, Ortiz briefly retired, with the California native eventually deciding to resume his career and currently competing outside of the Ultimate Fighting Championship. Number 9. Randy Couture. Having held both the UFC heavyweight and light heavyweight championships on numerous occasions, Randy the Natural Couture is one of the most decorated mixed martial artists of all time. That said, his relationship with Dana White didn't end on a good note.
Randy Couture comes off as the greatest guy in the world, Captain America. He's the furthest thing from it, and I'm happy to not be in business with him anymore.
After defending his heavyweight title at UFC 74 against Gabriel Gonzaga, much to the dismay of Dana White, the Natural was ready to part ways with the UFC. As for reasoning, Couture cited the fact that his longtime rival Chuck Liddell was paid more over the course of their last 2 fights. Couture also mentioned that he wanted to fight MMA legend Fedor Emelianenko, who wasn't signed with the UFC. For his part, Dana White felt that the real reason that the former 2-division champ wanted to leave the organization was to become a Hollywood star. Whatever the reason, Couture attempted to leave the UFC and began reaching out to several competing promotions. The issue was ultimately settled in a bitter and ugly court battle, which ruled that if Couture competed elsewhere, he would be in breach of his UFC contract. Randy Couture honoured the remainder of his deal and eventually headed over to Bellator to serve as a coach on the short-lived reality show Fight Masters. Unfortunately, his departure was less than ideal, as Couture's history with the UFC was essentially whitewashed once he left the promotion.
What's your relationship with the UFC right now?
I don't have one. Yeah, I've been exiled, or I've been persona non grata with the UFC, mostly because Dana just doesn't really care for me.
Number 8. Brendan Schaub. Brendan Schaub is a former UFC heavyweight who has gone on to have a successful career as a podcast host. During his fighting days, Schaub was an outspoken critic of the UFC sponsorship deal with Reebok. which he claimed resulted in a massive fighter pay cut. Of course, Dana White, a strong proponent of the Reebok deal, didn't appreciate the former Ultimate Fighter contestant's comments. Even after Schaub's retirement from the sport in 2015, his relationship with Dana White remained strained. White's disdain for the popular podcast host was on full display back in 2018, when Schaub openly criticized then up-and-comer Israel Adesanya, claiming that kickboxing backgrounds don't translate well in the UFC.
You know, I think everyone's all high and mighty on these guys who come from, you know, a kickboxing and boxing background. When they come over to the UFC, they expect them to be these elite strikers. The distance, the combos, the head movement, the number of variables, it's a completely different game. So to me, that never translates.
The UFC president, never one to mince his words, fired back at Schaub, stating this on social media. Unsurprisingly, Brendan Schaub has since been blocked by Dana White since they last spoke. Number 7. Cris Cyborg. Cris Cyborg is easily one of the greatest female fighters to ever set foot inside the UFC octagon. That said, her relationship with Dana White would cut her career with the organisation short. Although, to be fair, it was the UFC president who fired the initial shot which ignited the feud. In 2014, White was very critical of the Brazilian star, with the UFC president even quoted as saying that the talented featherweight looked like Wanderlei Silva in a dress and heels.
When I saw her at the MMA Awards, she looked like Wanderlei Silva in a dress and heels. And she did. Didn't she not?
Despite the comment, she would later sign with the UFC and have a remarkable run, even becoming the women's featherweight champion. However, in December of 2018, it took Amanda Nunes just 51 seconds to end her brief title reign. Following the shocking result, White claimed that she refused a rematch with Amanda Nunes. In an ill-advised move, the former champ tried to refute White's claim by using doctored video footage, making the UFC president look like a liar. As a result of the video, White announced the promotion would not attempt to re-sign her following her bout with Felicia Spencer in July of 2019.
What she did was dirty. Dirty what she did with the video and all this other stuff, and then meanwhile she's running around saying she better get an apology from me. Yeah, she's unhappy, we're unhappy, she lies and does that thing. See you later, have a nice life.
Cris Cyborg would eventually go on to sign with Bellator and become a champion with the promotion. Number 6. Anderson Silva. With a middleweight title reign that lasted 2,457 days, Anderson the Spider Silva will undoubtedly be inducted into the UFC Hall of Fame. However, even a UFC career as remarkable as Silva's has had a few lowlights. UFC 112 was the organisation's first event held in the Middle East. Hoping to make a splash with their regional debut, the promotion headlined the event with a title fight between Anderson Silva and Damian Maia. Prior to the bout, Silva was fresh off of a highlight reel knockout win over Forrest Griffin. So, naturally, the UFC was hoping he could deliver similar fireworks for their Middle Eastern fans. Unfortunately, Silva vs Maia turned out to be a dud, thus resulting in one of the worst pay-per-view main events in the promotion's history. At the post-fight press conference, a furious Dana White referred to the contest as an embarrassment.
I don't think I've ever been more embarrassed in the 10 years of being in this business. And it's the first time that I've ever walked out on a main event and given the belt to the guy's manager and told him to put it on him.
Number 5. George St Pierre. George Rush St Pierre may very well be the greatest mixed martial artist of all time. That said, even a star with a squeaky clean image like St Pierre managed to get on the boss's bad side. One such occasion came following his controversial win over Johnny Hendricks at UFC 167, where Dana White blasted the Canadian superstar for choosing to retire rather than offering a rematch.
That decision that happens, right? You don't just say, hey, I'm going to take a while off, and maybe I'll be back, maybe I won't. You owe it to the fans, you owe it to that belt, you owe it to this company, and you owe it to Johnny Hendricks to give him that opportunity to fight again.
After roughly 4 years away from the sport, GSP made his long-awaited return to challenge Michael Bisping for the middleweight belt. However, prior to the bout, Dana White expressed his concerns about St Pierre possibly vacating the title if he won.
You think there's a chance he vacates that belt and goes to 170? Or I mean, there's a lot of monsters in that division.
I don't want to hear that. That's not what I want to hear. I want to hear he's going to defend his 85-pound title.
But what happens if he comes and says, it's too big, they're too big, I can't do it, I don't want to do it?
I'm going to be super pissed,
and I don't know where we go from there.
Unfortunately, Dana White's biggest fears came true once GSP submitted Michael Bisping at UFC 217. Despite being contractually obligated to unify his belt with Robert Whittaker, GSP decided to vacate the title and step away from the sport. While Dana White claimed he wasn't upset with the decision, his remarks regarding the situation suggested otherwise.
There's a reason I put that stuff in the contract for him to sign. There's a reason. And you know, am I shocked? You know, I don't think anybody's shocked. Came out, he handpicked Bisping and then went away again. So whatever, it is what it is. I had him sign a contract that said he would defend against Whittaker for a reason, because I knew he wouldn't.
Number 4. Colby Covington. Since transforming from a mild-mannered wrestler to one of the sport's premier trash talkers, Colby Covington has upset seemingly everyone in the world of mixed martial arts and beyond, which of course includes Dana White.
Stop filming.
Come on, bro.
Stop filming.
I want an explanation, man.
Gambling. You too. Dreadlock, dude.
Initially, Covington was angry with Dana White for pushing his title fight with Kamaru Usman back from UFC 244 to UFC 245. Moreover, White also blamed chaos for the fight having to be postponed. In response, Covington boldly proclaimed that he wouldn't allow the UFC president to place the title around his waist at UFC 245. The brash welterweight even went so far as to say,
"If he tries to wrap that belt around my waist, I'm gonna take the belt from him and slap him in the face with it."
Well, White responded, and let's just say he wasn't happy.
Good luck with that. He's a big mouth fucking idiot.
Of course, Usman would end up defending his title, thus making the whole back and forth between Covington and White rather pointless. Number 3. Tyron Woodley. The chosen one Tyron Woodley is a former UFC champ who has long been one of the promotion's top welterweights. Yet, for all his accomplishments, Woodley hasn't been able to connect with fans the way other high-profile athletes have.
First of all, I'm gonna give the fans a chance to boo. Go ahead and boo and get out the way. There you go.
In 2017, the welterweight standout publicly implied that race played a part in his popularity. Seemingly displeased with the accusation, Dana White fired back by calling Woodley boring. Or, as he put it,
when you get booed out of an arena, it means people don't want to watch you fight. You ask fans if they want to see Woodley fight again. I think that would be a flat-out no.
The heavy criticism from White prompted Woodley to threaten a leak if he didn't receive a public apology. Fortunately, the matter was resolved before it had a chance to get any worse. Though Dana White made it clear that he has no ill will towards Woodley, he has admitted that the former champ has been the hardest star he's ever dealt with.
The hardest kid that I ever dealt with. And everybody thinks that I don't like him. You know, it have to be Woodley. Woodley's the hardest kid I've ever dealt with.
Number 2. Conor McGregor. One fighter who has never had trouble connecting with fans is the notorious Conor McGregor, a man who is currently the biggest star in combat sports. That said, Dana White has had his fair share of issues with McGregor. The most recent example would likely be this past September, when McGregor took to Twitter releasing a series of private messages he exchanged with White regarding his next fight. Needless to say, White didn't appreciate McGregor making their conversations public.
This is some man code stuff, you know. It's just something you don't do. It's one of the dirtiest things you can do.
Of course, there have been several other instances over the years in which the two have butted heads. Back in 2016, McGregor was set to rematch Nate Diaz at UFC 200. However, in an unexpected move, McGregor decided that he didn't want to show up for the press conferences leading up to the fight. His refusal to speak to the media upset the UFC president, who ultimately decided to pull McGregor from the card. Then, there was the infamous dolly incident, in which the Dublin native hurled the instrument at a bus full of UFC fighters, including his hated rival Khabib Nurmagomedov. Once the shocking news broke, Dana White called the act the most disgusting thing that has ever happened in the history of the company.
This is the most disgusting thing that has ever happened in the history of the company.
That said, the UFC still used the footage of the incident to promote the eventual fight between McGregor and Nurmagomedov. Number 1. Jon Jones. It's easy to understand how Dana White could be frustrated with longtime light heavyweight champ Jon Jones. After all, Jones has had several issues both inside and outside the cage, including multiple failed drugs tests and being involved in a high-profile hit-and-run. Unfortunately, those aren't the only times that Jones has rubbed Dana White the wrong way. He famously put himself at odds with the promotion back in 2012, after he forced the cancellation of UFC 151 by refusing to fight Chael Sonnen. In response, White heavily criticised Jones for not taking the matter seriously.
This is probably one of my all-time lows as being president of the UFC over the last 11 years. For the first time in 11 years, we're going to cancel an event. The one thing that I never thought in a million years would happen, happened. Jon Jones said, "I'm not fighting Chael Sonnen," with 8 days' notice.
More recently, the two were involved in a contract dispute, in which White claimed that Jones wanted an astounding $30 million to fight heavyweight knockout artist Francis Ngannou.
Told my lawyer he wants what Deontay Wilder was paid. I think it was $30 million.
For the amount of money he's asking for, it's not going to happen. I mean, you couldn't be asking for a more absurd amount of money at a worse time.
For his part, Jones denied the claims and even called White a liar. Dana White later responded to the tweet by saying this.
In one of his tweets, he was saying that I tarnished his... I tarnished you? You've done a very good job of tarnishing you.
While White has acknowledged Jones's status as an all-time great, their relationship has undoubtedly been strained at times. As always, if you guys enjoyed this video, then please be sure to let me know by leaving a like and subscribing to our channel. Apart from that, thanks so much for watching, guys, and we'll see you on the next video.